Hello, I'm Sayojita. Today's video is Poori, one of the most loved Indian breads. Crisp yet soft, puffy, and simply delicious with desserts like Shrikhand and Basundi, or with practically any Indian gravy. The process for making puris is much like any other Indian roti. Make the dough balls, roll or flatten the dough, and then cook the dough. In this case, we will be deep frying. Seems rather simple, doesn't it? And it is. However, there are typically three things that can go wrong while making puris. One, they don't puff at all. Two, they can be quite greasy. And three, they puff beautifully when in the oil, but they fall flat as soon as they're out of it. I'm going to show you how you can avoid these right here. There are 5 things to take care of and you'll be making perfect puris every time. In the first part of this video, I'm going to show you just the process and the beautiful puris. And in the second part, I'm going to show you what could go wrong. Let's get started then. I'm making a lot of puris today, about 40. Just using atta, no maida or suji, they're not needed. I usually like to add salt, but you can leave it out. It does not affect the texture of the puris, only the taste. The larger quantity of ghee relative to chapati dough yields crisp puris that hold their shape well after frying. You can use oil for a vegan version. For starters, I'm going to use a little less than 1 cup of water. The amount of water you need depends on the coarseness of your flour and the amount of fiber in it. I think I need some more. I'm adding what was remaining from the 1 cup of water. Puri dough must be quite stiff. The hot water makes it easier to knead the dough, especially if you're kneading by hand. And a couple more tablespoons to collect the loose flour. The ratio of flour to ghee is about 3:1. This of course makes it harder to knead by hand, and I would therefore recommend using a food processor, especially if you're making a lot of puris. I'm using my hands just to show you the process. If you're making only 10 to 12 puris, then it's not worth using a food processor. But somehow I'm always making a lot of puris. Puri dough has the same ingredients as chapati dough. Atta or whole wheat flour, ghee, salt and hot water. But there the similarity ends. The texture is completely different. Chapati dough is much softer than puri dough. This dough must eventually form a smooth ball. It's reasonably soft right now, mainly because we are using hot water. Wet your palms, it makes it easier to knead the dough. Right now I'm only going to knead it a little bit and let it rest for about 20 minutes to allow the gluten to be activated. Then it will be much easier to knead and make into a ball. If you are using a food processor, just knead it well right now and make a smooth ball and set it aside. It's been 20 minutes and here is the dough, rather smooth and visibly softer. The gluten has been activated. Now you have to knead it well until it's smooth. I'm going to divide it into 2 just for easier handling. If you have made the dough in a food processor, you just need to knead it a couple of times and that's it. There should be minimal cracks in the dough. I have divided it further to make the dough balls. Make a long smooth rope about 3/4 to 1 inch in diameter. And cut or break it into small pieces about 1 inch thick. We have 38 lumps, which will translate to 38 puris. I'm going to roll them into balls and then flatten them into discs, which should have none or minimal cracks. If you must have cracks, they must be on one side and that will be the bottom of the disc, as we will refer to it. I think this is the toughest part of the whole process. There is no tool that I know of to make this step easier. It takes only about 5 to 10 seconds per ball, so it's not too bad. The time spent is well worth it. Wetting your palms helps here too. It's most efficient to make all the balls and discs first and then start rolling and frying the puris. You can make them an hour beforehand and keep them covered with a damp towel. Now the rolling and frying process. I'm showing you the most efficient way for one person to do this. I'm using oil to help roll the puris, making sure that they don't stick to the board. A few drops on the rolling board is fine. Take a dough disc, keep the side with the cracks if you have any on the bottom, and roll into a thin circle. The oil will prevent it from sticking. You can also use dry flour as in chapatis, but then the loose flour will fall into the oil while frying and burn and coat the puris. So I just prefer to use oil, it's so much easier. Puris should be thin, It's not so thin that they tear easily. This one is about ready to go in the oil. The temperature of the oil should be about 180 degrees centigrade or 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Most of us in Indian households do not use kitchen thermometers. So I'm showing you a way to test the temperature without having one. Drop a small bit of dough in the oil. It must sizzle and rise to the surface immediately, say in about 3 to 4 seconds. If it does not, wait and repeat the test or just wait a little bit, then move on. I'm going to drop the puri in now, the bottom side in the oil first. That is the side that may have had cracks. I keep repeating this like a broken record, but I think it is important to have your puris puff consistently. When you put the puri in the oil, the temperature of the oil drops. Increase the heat a little bit to let it come back to a good frying temperature. Gently press down the puri in the oil until it puffs out. Flip it over to allow it to puff all the way. Let each side rest in the oil for a few seconds. I like my puris to be golden brown. If you prefer yours to be darker, then keep them in the oil for a few seconds longer. My wheat is white, so these puris will be lighter in color than those made with red wheat. A miscellaneous tip. If you do not have to make too many puris, say only about 12, use a small kadai, about 5 to 6 inches wide and 3 to 4 inches deep. This way you can be frugal with the oil. That's a beautiful puri. I'm going to take it out to drain on a paper towel lined plate. Then I'm going to lower the heat a little bit while I roll the next puri. This allows the temperature of the oil to stabilize before I add the next one. I find that if you're just one person making puris, the roll one, fry one and then roll the next process works far better than say roll 3 puris, fry 3 puris and then roll 3 again. Another tip, if 2 people are making puris and let's say there are a lot of puris to prepare, then you can use a big kadai and fry 2 to 3 at a time. For me, for about 30 to 40 puris, one person rolling and roasting works the best. This one has a tiny hole here, probably because there was a fold or a crack in the dough ball. But it's still puffing. That's because the crack was on the bottom side of the puri. And there, that's a plate full of puris all done. Crisp on the top and soft to eat. This is the first batch of puris I fried about 45 minutes ago. And you can see they're all still puffed up and holding their shape. While hot, straight from the kadai puris are the best. It's not practical to prepare them that way when you're serving a lot of people. There is a long wait time for everyone. I like to fry a large number, enough for everyone to get started with their meal, and then make the rest. In this situation, it is important for the puris to hold their shape and texture for at least 30 to 45 minutes after frying. The ghee in the dough is what allows the puri to do so. Now for part 2. In the first part, we saw puris that were perfect and how to make those. In this section, I'm going to show you puris that go wrong and why they went wrong. Let's take a look. I have 2 types of dough here. This one is proper puri dough, stiff and with ghee in it. And this other one is soft chapati dough, which has just a little bit of ghee. The first puri I'm going to fry is the perfect one, as I call it. I'm going to use it as a baseline. We have already seen this in the first part, so I'm just going to speed through all of it. The oil is nice and hot. The dough ball is smooth, at least on the top. I'm going to roll out the puri and drop it in the oil. It has puffed beautifully as expected, in spite of that tiny hole. We will be using this one for comparison with the other puris. Next, we're going to see what happens when the oil is not hot enough. I'm still using puri dough and the dough ball is still perfect. The only variable is the temperature of the oil. It's a bit cooler than it should be. I've kept the heat low just for demonstration purposes. the roll puri is perfect. However, it's not puffing quite as well. And that's because of the temperature of the oil. Puris should be sort of flash fried. If the oil is much cooler, the puri will also be greasy and somewhat chewy, as in the case of this next puri. In this case, the oil is even cooler than the previous case. Unfortunately, the camera went off during the crucial step of dropping the puri in. The only clue we have that the oil is not quite hot enough is the paucity of bubbles in the oil while the puri is frying. Sadly, it did not puff. It's quite greasy and chewy because it stayed in the oil for a much longer time. The next case is when the dough ball is not smooth. Here again, I am showing an exaggerated case for demonstration purposes. I have used a heavily cracked ball of puri dough and I've kept the cracked side on top while rolling as also for frying. The puri looks rather smooth now after rolling since all the cracks have been pressed down. However, there are invisible cracks and they will cause problems when dropped in the oil. The temperature of the oil is just fine. And you can see it's not puffing either. Any tiny cracks that are on the top surface of the puri open up as it tries to puff. Air is let out of the opening and the puri will not be able to puff. If the cracks are in the bottom and the top is smooth, puri will still be able to puff and you'll have a beautiful puffed puri. The same phenomenon is true for frying kachoris or baking pav, for example. If you keep the jointed side on the top, the cracks will open out on heating. Let's take a look at our perfect puri. It had a crack too, but it was at the bottom. The top was smooth and so it puffed beautifully. This last case is for when the dough does not have ghee or oil. I'm using my chapati dough, which does have a little ghee, but not nearly as much as it should have. Let us see what happens. All other conditions are perfect. The oil, the smoothness of the dough ball, etc. Puffing is not going to be a problem with this dough. Remaining puffed after it is out of the oil is going to be a little bit problematic. Since the dough was really soft, this puri is a bit wonky, sort of heart shape. Actually, that's good because we can therefore distinguish it from the perfect puri. Here we are, it's been about half an hour since I made the perfect puri and you can see it's still holding shape. And this one is the heart-shaped wonky puri that I made with the chapati dough about 20 minutes after the perfect one. It has started deflating already. Here are two puris that have not puffed for different reasons. This one is because the temperature of the oil was not high enough. And the second one because the top side had some cracks. Finally, to summarize the do's and don'ts of puri making. Do make a stiff dough and do use a food processor if you have one. Do add ghee or oil to the dough to prevent puris from deflating shortly after frying. Do make dough balls that are smooth on the top and preferably on the bottom too. Do make sure that the oil is sufficiently hot. Do drop the puri in the oil with the not so smooth side on the bottom. And a bonus sixth tip, use oil, not flour, to roll the puris. Loose flour will fall into the hot oil and burn and stick to your puris, making them far from perfect. Take care of these 5 aspects and you'll be making perfect puris every time. Here are my puris served with their favorite dessert companions, Shrikhand and Basundi. Well, that's it for puris. I hope you found the video useful and will be making puris in your kitchen at home shortly. I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments below. In the meanwhile, I do have plenty of roti videos in this playlist right here that you may want to check out. I'll see you again next week. Thank you for watching.